I'm
Awesome.
Peter Chiang. I'm Visual Effects Supervisor on Fast 9.
Thanks so much for coming on. I was curious, like for you, how did you first get started out? Um, I believe you kind of started more in a traditional special effects background and then kind of grew from there.
Yeah, it was really model making and Derek Meddings and Roy Field. So it's a mixture of miniatures and optical effects. So I started analog and, kind of really worked my way up through that until somebody trusts you and says, hey, how would you like to supervise a film? Which the first one I supervised was Hackers in 95. So,
Mhm.
and from then on, you just kind of keep your head down and just keep going, kind of
I
just,
love that.
yeah.
I gotta ask, you worked in Thomas the Tank Engine, didn't you?
I did. Oh, God.
I had to bring it up.
Yeah, just a shot, like they needed an animation done. And, I started off in animation. So it was just great to do it. It's a nice little thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't help. I had to go through IMDb, and obviously that's a blast from my past as being an audience participator rather than part of it all. But yeah, I just think it's amazing because, again, it's interesting to kind of see where we all do start out creatively and where we kind of innovate and evolve into different areas. I'm curious, like in terms of DNEG, how did you guys first get started? Because obviously you guys have been around for a long time and you're one of the biggest in the world. What's the backstory with how Double Negative initially got hit the
Yeah,
ground running?
it's really down to kind of Michael Kuhn, who was then running, who was head of Polygram, and Tim Bevan and Eric Fellner of Working Title. And I'd been working with them on The Borrowers. And straight after The Borrowers, we were kind of jumping into Peter Hewitt's Thunderbirds. And from that, really, they realized there was a need to service their productions where they could make it more efficient in post-production. And they kind of approached me and said, hey, look, do you want to set up a company and, do films? And I said, yeah, that'd be great, But so they funded literally the whole thing. And it was their kind of foresight into just seeing the way in which, post-production was becoming such an integral part to the filmmaking process that they said, why not make it more efficient, with the dollars and, get our own people to do it. And I then approached Matt Holben and Alex Hope, because I've never set up a company, never done any of that sort of thing. And they come from that sort of background. And they were, so the three of us really took on, setting up DNEG in 98, and which led to our first production, which was Pitch Black in 98 and 97, 98. And really, we were a team of 35 people, really keen to kind of get going and get in big projects. But obviously, it's all down to the show reel and what you do. So we had to build up slowly. And we, managed to get in shows and do projects. And we built it up to kind of 1,500 people. And that's when
Crazy, right?
Prime Focus took over, and they've grown even bigger. So Mammoth's grown even bigger. So it's great. It's a great testament to the people that are at DNEG and, Alex and Matt and, the team. They're also, leading and just really guiding the people in DNEG, to just really how to tackle shows, how to handle clients, the standard of work that needs to be done. And I'm very pleased with the way in which, people have latched on to the whole DNEG thing and just taken the ball and run, and, Paul Franklin and, all those people have done a fantastic job,
I love that. And I'm just curious for anyone listening to I feel like a lot of more younger creatives, especially, really neglect the value in relationships. And just knowing that you were talking about initially having someone have faith in you to go off and do to supervise on features, but also then when it comes time to build a company, having people again believe in you, but also rounding up the right people around you as well. Like, how valuable are relationships in terms of career and just in general, like being able to build up a strong network?
I think it's absolutely key, your relationships. I think, artistic ability, obviously, is, you need that. But really half the battle, I found just as a supervisor, was your relationship with other HODs, your relationship with the director, your relationship with your key people. Basically my job is to look at shots and tell people that their work is not good enough. Now, how do you present that in a constructive way to motivate them to want to do, the shot better? And, as VFX artists, you're constantly taking hits. I get beaten up by the director when they say this is not good enough and we need to do it. And, my job is to, sort of filter that down and motivate the team to kind of, do it again and do it better. But why? Constructively. And so the relationships with those people, the way in which you approach talking to them and critiques and cine-syncs and really your relationship with everybody, you want a happy ship. You want to be able to go to this guy and say, hey, special effects, look, I know that's a tricky problem. Don't worry about that, but give me this, and then we can make it work. And then talking to the director, making sure you have his trust. Like Justin has to trust me to be able to say, hey, Justin, I think we're good with doing that CG. We need to do this physical. And the producers as well, because they're saying, why does Peter need to go there? Yeah, helicopter. So many. Why does he need to go to Thailand? Why does he need to go to Tbilisi, Georgia? Why does he need so many arrays on Fast and Furious? And you have to sit there and explain it. And, there's a logical reason why, but always I think the relationship between you and the people are vital in making sure that those cogs get kind of turned. And, at the end of the day, you get to service the film properly.
Yeah, I think it's so vital and it's so overlooked at the same time. You're right. I think a lot of people invest so much into, I got to be able to do the job that I'm hired to do, but not realizing that you got to think three-dimensional. It's all the soft skills that really pay off long-term rather than just being able to do what, you're pushing the button or whatever it is that you're assigned to do. And I'm curious too, like talking about Pitch Black, that was the first time I ever heard of you guys was that movie. And I believe you guys had done the ship crash sequence at the very beginning. I haven't seen that movie since it came out, so it's a long time ago now.
Yeah, I mean, Pitch Black did, DNEG did the whole of the show, but Hunter Gratzner, Ian Hunter was integral to that opening sequence of the model shoot. I mean, I wouldn't say it's miniatures, kind of maxages, I mean, we had a great big 9-foot long cargo ship on a motion control rig. So they were doing all of those miniatures in LA, and then we were compositing all of the stuff in London. So the shoot was in Australia. Yeah,
on the Gold Coast.
Yeah. And then the miniatures were happening and I can remember downloading the dailies, to a television station, and then getting it on tape, and then go to David Tui's hotel and putting in a VHS and looking at the downloaded images, making notes, and then talking to Ian on the telephone, kind of way back in the day.
It's come a long way since CineSync and everything else that we use these days.
It has, yeah. But hey, you kind of make it work,
I love that. And I'm just curious too, just because you mentioned that project, like what were some of the biggest challenges on that job at the time, knowing that you were a fresh new studio? I'm sure it was a test bed for the pipeline as well, but also just knowing again, like how long ago that was. Things these days obviously can be a lot more ambitious. So for you guys, like what were the big challenges on a show like that back then?
Yeah, clearly the creature and the animation and all the the soft body stuff and all of that was the main focus. We had to. The film lived or died by the creature, and the creature needed to look. And luckily, we had a fantastic design by Patrick Totopoulos. So he did an amazing design, which went such a long way in making sure that, you know, it was represented visually on screen right. I think that's where the collaboration between departments is so key. You know, it's not necessary that you can design a great creature in the VFX world. You need specialists who kind of do that, artists who have that kind of vision, and then we'll take it over and then make it real. So I think the creature work was, you know, the trickiest that we'd done, you know, so we had to set it all up from scratch, 35 people working it all out, textures. John Cox was a fabricator of the you know, the puppeteering side of things, which was fantastic because we could hinge off of that, take the textures off of that, and really see physically how big it was, and then, you know, really get into the animation and making it as scary as possible, you know.
So great. And I want to talk about F9, but before we do, one quick question I had was more to do with DNEG now and how international you guys are. I'm curious, like, when did you guys feel it was time to start to expand internationally and start to set up in Singapore and other locations?
Yeah, I think that really the advent of everybody deciding to have tax breaks dotted all around the world. I mean, Australia and shooting, and, you know, Montreal and Vancouver. I mean, there was a great, you know, international surge to just be represented in all of these territories. And I think that, you know, that meant you could get a lot more work, you know, basically, because you could qualify for the tax break and the whatever, you know, make the numbers work. And I think the world's a smaller place. And I think, given COVID, I think, you know, everybody working remotely it shows that it can work. You know, you don't need to be in a central location now in order to produce, you know, fantastic work. I mean, I flew back to England in March 2020, just as lockdown happened in the UK, and we were due to finish Fast 9 in April, the end of April, and we actually finished it, you know, just before Christmas. So, you know, setting up the remote thing and doing it, you know, and working out reviews and all that sort of stuff, I think has opened everybody's eyes to say, hey, do we need that expensive office in with thousands of seats and stuff? No, we don't. And are people's lives better because they can spend more time with their family and just really work? And, you know, I actually found myself doing more work because you had no external distractions while you're, you know, and so you focus more on what you were doing, and you kind of just dug in. But it meant that you worked intensely for a short amount of time, and then, you know, you could relax after that. So I think it was driven by wanting to be represented in territories in order to gain work. And I think the world is now, obviously the VFX world has cottoned onto that, and the film world has cottoned onto that. So you'll find all the major companies have stations everywhere in order to cover everything. You know, there's no territory that, you know, it can now present the filmmakers with a choice of so many VFX studios that they can choose from to do the work, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, especially as you mentioned with COVID, knowing that in a lot of ways, like, we're all virtual at this point. So the physical location isn't as important, since, you know, even when we are physically in the same place, a lot of the time we're communicating through Shotgun or other tools to make sure it's all logged. So in a lot of ways, you know, where you are physically doesn't matter as much as making sure that you've got a good workflow that everyone can communicate fluently with each other.
Yeah, and I think people's attitude towards the work, you know, given COVID and given, hey, I'm stuck at home, and look, actually, home allows me to do these other things, but it's made people think more about, you know, their life and what they want to do. And I think that is reflected in the work, because they're more at ease. They've kind of worked out a pattern. You know, they haven't got to get the tube into Great Portland Street. You know, they haven't got a long car journey or whatever it is. That they're just more chilled. And you know, hey, there's pluses.
absolutely. And with Fast 9, how did you first get involved?
Yeah, I probably talked to Justin. Let's see, what are we? 2020, and we shot 2019. So it must have been around, May 2018. Actually, it's quite a while ago. Justin flew over to London, and we had lunch, and he talked to me about the project, and he said he was going back, to do, because obviously I talked with him on Trek about it, and he said, no, I may not do it, and all that. So I kind of didn't think much more about it, but he flew over to London, and we talked, and he said, hey, what are you doing? Do you want to do this? And one thing led to another, and we started production in 2019, January 2019, I think, and that's how. So I heard about it probably 6 months before the show actually kicked off. He's kind of lining up his peeps, Steve Wyndon, that sort of thing, making sure the timing's right, and all that.
All the chess pieces are in the right place.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I'm curious, at least on paper, were there any specific sequences when you were looking at the initial script that kind of stood out as, oh shit, how are you going to do this? Or any ones that at least, had that red circle around, spend more time trying to figure this one out?
Yeah, there's quite a few things actually, but I think right from the outset, the physicality of it all and making that believable, I think, is the hardest thing, because there's a certain amount of making it believable, but it looks boring, so you need to kind of amp it up a bit, and it's a fast film, so can some of the things be done? I mean, hey, it's a push, but it's a push in a nice way that sort of gets the adrenaline going, and hopefully is enjoyable to watch. So we were kind of conscious of that, because obviously sitting there, I look at Alex Vey and Justin are presenting me this previs that they've done, and you see this great armadillo flipping and doing all this amazing stuff, and you go, okay, even I'm still thinking, hey, is that physically possible and all that? So that was a big, in the back of my mind, a conscious thing of how do we, physically make those things as believable as possible. And then obviously digi-doubles have moved on a lot, and we really wanted to, if I said to you, none of the actors went on location outside of the UK. So they weren't in Thailand, they weren't in, Tbilisi, Georgia. And we had to put all those people in. So we started to think about ways of integrating it more seamlessly without having to cut to a driving shot and then cut to a wide, cut to a driving shot. So several instances we did Moco moves, to blend the two, and we knew that face replacements and digi-doubles were going to be very important in getting the believability of that. And even in the fight scenes, where Vin is such a unique character, and his physique is pretty unique, and there's not much, even the stunt doubles when they were fighting, we digitally replaced those with CG Vin, because it just didn't look like the man. So we wanted to represent him properly, and so there was a push in that technology to catch up with where Medusa is and Dorothy rig and all of that sort of stuff that we used in order to do facial capture and get that side of things. So those were probably the two main areas. Environments, everything was pretty straightforward. Space, that's pretty straightforward. Everybody's seen such great space movies in the past, and so on that line of things we were very much NASA. Everything was based on NASA footage, NASA photographs of Earth, NASA technology. Even Justin was talking to a NASA scientist about, feasibility of things. So, that was based on some sort of reality, kind of thing. So,
I love that.
Yeah.
I wish I could have been part of that conversation of, hey, we want to have a car fly up into space, but
yeah.
That was actually one of the things I wanted to bring up was digital doubles. And I'm kind of curious, like, how confident you are these days, where I think digital doubles back in the day, I always think of Meet Joe Black and, of course, Jurassic Park. The lawyer gets eaten by a T-Rex is kind of the first time I'd seen the swap out of live action talent to CG. But typically, let's say 15 years ago, 10 years ago even, usually digital double would be more for quick cuts or in the background, opposed to now where you get some Marvel movies where it's, rather than doing reshoots and pickups, it's easier just to say, well, we'll just animate Thor or whoever it might be. I'm curious, like, these days, how often is that becoming a decision to lean more towards, we'll just do a face replacement or, get the stunt person in, opposed to feeling like there's going to be limitations to how close you can get or how far you can push things?
Yeah, I think the technology nowadays, and it's given by, some very fine examples out there, Gemini Man and, Benjamin Button, those sorts of things. And I think that those films have gone a long way in just making everybody comfortable that, a digi-double or a CG face replacement can be, imperceptible. And, if you look at Vin's fight sequence, as he pulls down the hideout, a lot of that is full CG body double, and even a shot of him. I think there's one cut of him between two people where he's pushing and grimacing. That's a full CG Vin. So, those sorts of shots, are. You always have a reference, and will never ever get, it's driven by safety, it's driven by, believability that the stunt person can do that, and even then, as I was going back to the original, the physicality of a stunt double doesn't fit the exact physique of Vin. He's so unique. So therefore, it's great as a tracking tool and lighting tool to just see how he is, but ultimately you're in there. So, whatever, the cloth, the skin sliding, the muscles, everything needs to be spot on. And, we had very good cooperation from Vin to go into the rigs, and, he knew the importance of it. And, we explained it to him, hey, it's something that, you build up this library, and with this library, we can do things for you, and make it work and make the film more, just imperceptible. That obviously for the safety reasons, we want to protect the star. That these things can be done safely on set without anybody coming to any harm. So. I think it's a great tool, and I think nobody should get hurt on a film set. Absolutely. There's no need for it now. It's there are techniques that are, just as that make things believable that the actor was there. And so, hey, I think they should be used more.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited to see where this all goes, because you're absolutely right. When it comes to safety, even just recently, like I think the latest season of The Walking Dead, that was where suddenly there's knife fights that are very separated because you couldn't have 3 or 4 more people interacting on set. So it's kind of consciously having to decide, in terms of proximity, as well as the stunts that you're doing. I mean, I think there's so much innovation now that there's no reason not to choose a safer route rather than either risking your talent or the stunt people who are always risking their health.
Yeah, Spiro, who shot the second unit, we were doing a lot of car stunts, abroad, and we would talk very closely about, look, that's the principal action of it. And look, although we've got all these other cars, they don't need to be in the location around them because, what if that car flips out, or the dangers of that? So let's just have the two main cars doing what we're doing, and we'll put the rest in CG. Nobody will ever know, Mm-hmm. And so you come to those decisions because it's just a lot safer. A lot, the flipping of the car. Do we have NASCARs driving past as that accident is going on? Well, because we're doing it physically, for the main, RAM on the car, we don't want anybody else around it who could get injured. So let's put them in after, and make it safe. So it extends to physical things as well as digidoubles, helicopters flying close to each other. If you look at the helicopters, they're chasing Jacob as they go off the cliff. There's only one helicopter there. The other one's put in CG because it's, deemed too dangerous. There's a lovely shot of them swinging round. There's one helicopter in there, but the second one is CG because, it's just easier. Nice to have the cameraman frame up on one and then, give us all the lighting cues, and then we'll put the other one in, Saves.
You've got a giant fan blowing the foliage around, so you've got that covered from one helicopter. You don't need more than that.
Yeah, that physical dust swirl it's physical. It actually what the rollerblades did. But look, don't get me wrong. I always push for, very early on in the production, the armadillo flip. We talked to Alistair Williams, who was the special effects supervisor, great supervisor. We had a great relationship with him on the flipping of that, and we said, hey, do you think you could do some version of it? Because we would learn so much. So we started off doing, rigid body stuff, to get the dynamics right, and then we would show him what ideally we would want, and then he would say physically whether he could actually do it. Now, even a simple thing like that, although the armadillo goes end over end, we didn't want it to go end over end because end over end means the cab twists and then it buckles this way, so it zigzags. So we wanted the weight to push down, and then as that goes, you get, secondary action of the carriage being slightly delayed and then pulling the last carriage over. So it's very specific about the physics of this thing that we wanted it to do. And up front, we did all these tests to portray that, so that we said to Alistair, hey, we don't want it going like this, which is easy. We want it going at an angle, twisting, but then the next carriage needs to twist the other way, and the next one needs to twist the other way. So if you see the animation, it's kind of quite complex. So in the end, what did he do? He just did this carriage, and even then this carriage was limited. So we rubbed that out and,
Yeah, it's a lot easier to hit all the beats that the director wants to when you're actually able to go back and revise things, opposed to this is what we caught on the day in frame.
Yeah, but it was great going through that process, wanting it to, one of my regrets is not doing a car doing a Tarzan swing. We were referencing, all sorts of live cars. I think there's a great shot in the Blues Brothers where they dropped a red car. It's awesome, to physically see a car in space. Now you watch it, there's not much going on. It's pretty, it is what it is.
It's vanilla.
So to amp it up, you need to, and that was so it was a playoff between amp and real, it was constantly amp, real. Funny.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm curious too, I think back to, like, let's say I got into visual effects around 94, I think. And, back then, if a movie had 250 visual effects shots, that would be a lot. And I think Frighteners came along, that was about 450. And then Phantom Menace was the first thing to really hit 1,000. But I believe Fast 9's like 2,000 shots, something like that.
Yeah, I got some notes here. 2,284. And that was, that was split up between 1,214 in London, DNEG, 551 in Montreal. ILM did 223. Stereo D did 117. Gotta Plug the Houses. Proof and In-House did 64, and Lola did 115. So yeah, but we probably worked on 2,400, something like that. Yeah,
it's absolutely nuts. Like, how common is that now, getting to a point where every single slate has got a little V in the corner somewhere to indicate there's some touch-ups or something going on?
Yeah, look, hey, relatively, this film's small. You compare it to Marvel. A Black Widow, I'm sure, is higher than that. You know, Avengers, much higher than that. Star Wars, higher than that. You know, Avatar will be way higher than that. So, you know,
Avatar, occasionally they'll have a live action shot, and then you're like, oh yeah, I forgot this was a live action film. So,
yeah. So, you know, relatively, I guess we're kind of medium large show, I would say, probably somewhere around there. You know,
yeah.
I wouldn't say we're a big show. You know, I mean, in terms of visual effects, I think, you know, they're up in the 2,800, 3,000s, 3,500s. You know,
I guess it's how it's positioned, because I guess because you're absolutely right. In the whole Fast series is a pretty massive franchise that keeps pushing the limitations of a lot of things, but one is the expectations of, you know, originally it's a car racing film, but yeah, I guess with Star Wars and everything else, you're expecting, oh yeah, it's a Star Wars film, it's visual effects extravaganza. And I think that's one thing that's been really successful about the series, is that you're not thinking of it as a visual effects film, even though it's massively augmented and massively pushed in every direction. So it still holds on to that perception of like you're watching a car racing action film more than anything.
Yeah, and a lot of shots, you know, if you look at the editors grab the footage, they cut the footage together, and then suddenly, I don't know, in Tbilisi, the blue bus is in the wrong place. So we got to paint that blue bus out and move it to here because it now works for the cut. So although we shot it the same, you know, there's lots of cars that are put in to make sure that it all feels cohesive, you know. And those are subtle VFX stuff, you know, that you kind of don't even think about, you know, you just do, you know.
Absolutely. You touched on this earlier as well about COVID. I'm curious, knowing that this show is in production during all of this, but also just like Black Widow, actually, because that was one of my first questions to Digital Domain when everything started to close down, was, so what's happening with that show? And it's always been the show must go on, right? But I'm curious, like, how did you guys pivot? And because of all this, like, what were some of the ways you guys innovated as well, whether it's tools for communication, pipeline, remote setups, the whole deal? Yeah, like, how did COVID affect Fast 9?
Yeah, I mean, it was a period where, you know, Universal were great, and the whole world, I think, was reacting. And as I say, we were due to deliver at the end of April, and we actually delivered at the beginning of December. And in a way, that gave Justin kind of more time to think about things. So, you know, I have to say the film was better for it, you know. But in terms of technology, obviously you need to talk to DNEG, but obviously workstations need to be out there, network, safety, and Universal were fantastic in just, you know, understanding, you know, what the pandemic was doing to the VFX industry, and very patient about how much time we needed to kind of cope with it. And slowly, you know, the tools got set, everybody was able to access remotely the servers to render and post it, you know, safely. And, you know, internal supervisors were able to do reviews, and then they would send files to me, and then I would upload to, you know, via Aspira to, you know, LA, and then we could then do reviews. So my day was sort of back-ended. You know, I would hit the supervisors round about between 3 and 5 o'clock, and then LA would wake up 6, and then I would have reviews with them 8, 9, the, you know, LA vendors, and then I'd probably get into a review with Justin 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and then go through to sometimes 4 in the morning, you know, looking at shots. So it was very much back-ended towards LA. And, hey, technology has enabled us to kind of keep going. And God bless CineSync,
I actually had Rory McGregor, the CEO of CineSync, on a while back, which was kind of fun just to talk about that, knowing that, it's, as you mentioned, Aspera, there's so many tools that we kind of don't really think about because they're the backbone of how we work and work securely these days. But in a lot of ways, without that, we'd be uploading everything to an FTP or carrying over a floppy disk or something to someone else's desk. So it's pretty critical.
No, I mean, I come from a drawing background, and I went to art college, so everything for me is visual. So I need to be able to draw. I need to be able to draw on the frame, Photoshop stuff and send it all out, post, show Justin stuff. So, I can sit there and sketch for Justin's stuff, and, we can quickly come to a solution about composition and frames, so that tool has been just invaluable in communicating with the artists as well as, production director.
I love that. I want to respect your time. I got probably 2 or 3 more questions. One, I realize it's a bit open-ended, but if there's any particular shot you have in mind, would you mind walking through just more of an overview of the process from initially the script treatment to filming it and going through the post-process? And I completely understand your client-side VFX soup on this, so I'm not worrying about doing the rigid body sims or this and that, but more from the review process, the initial idea through to finaling it.
Yeah, I mean, really, one of the aspects of Fast and Furious is that you're never going to get the actors in the car, and you are going to need to shoot, blue screen, green screen, whatever, in order to represent them in the sequences. So we talked a lot about arrays, and arrays are vital in order to do that. So we set up a system very early on with Steve Wyndon. We said we would always, so if second unit was shooting a shot and they would have 4 cars, we would then use the stunt driver on location to run the array vehicle. So it'd be a 360 sometimes. And then in other instances where we needed stabilized heads, we would have to split it up between 5 cameras at the front, at the back, and 3 cameras at the front, and then stitch that together. So we always want to give the compositors the smoothest, material, so that then they can do all the shaking in the blue screen, and Steve can, and we can then match move that with, the plates. So for Steve Wyndon, we also, when we shot the plates, we had a 360-degree lens at the top, which would give us a fisheye. And we were able to put that into a QuickTime VR so that at any time he could stop on a frame on a plate and look around 360 and know what the lighting was like, so that he could then, match that on the blue screen. We would have the cars with Alistair, Special Effects Supervisor, on a gimbal, so that we could turn the car on the back lot to whatever sun direction we wanted. So sometimes it was front right, sometimes back left, whatever it is, we would match it. And then he would put cutters in to simulate shadows of trees or whatever. Now, further to that then, we would encode the plate in location so that we could then feed it into the 6-axis gimbal, so that they were at least feeling the ride of the stunt guy in location. And we could sync that per frame, time coded, with the plate that we shot. So it was all synced together. Now, obviously, Justin comes in and says, hey, that's a little too bumpy at that moment, because he says a line there. So smooth that out. So Alistair and his boys, a couple of boffins, Pete Britton and Callum, were able to kind of write software that we could smooth out the curves and then bolt new curves on. So we had a Waldo that we could then redo the move. So the complexity of deciding how to shoot the array plates. So on just one take of the cars going down, we would need 4 array plates, because he would want to cut from car 1 to car 2 to car 3 to car 4. So, but as you look out the car window of car 3, you would see car 4 behind and car 1 and 2 in front. So we shot the array plates with those cars in there. So we then, whenever we substituted the car out, we would have the original cars in there with the stunt drivers driving it so that they knew exactly. So we did that for every setup. And then the ideal thing was to do it at the same time, because that's how we set up the shot and the cameras, but also because the lighting then would match, the array plates would match the live action plates that are shot by all the second unit cameras. So for me, the process of determining all of that leading up to a driving shot was kind of key in making sure that everything integrated. You know, so in post, whenever we cut to a shot of Dom in the car, I knew the street that he was in, the encoded move, the lighting setup, the plate, the cars around, how we should do everything for the blue screen. And I think that was a key aspect that we spent a lot of time on. You know, and then to further complicate it, sorry, just to go on, is we had different heights, you know, because sometimes they're fighting on the armadillo, they're 17 foot high. So the array plate needs to be 17 foot, you know, and then it needs to be 4 foot for when they're in the car. And then it needs to be 11 foot for when they're fighting on top of the armory vehicle, when Mia and Han climb on that. So not only did we need stabilized heads and different heights, we also needed to shoot, you know, to be efficient. So I had 2 vehicles so that when they went back to 0, they could then change the camera height of the array while that one's being shot, so that immediately afterwards that one goes. So it was, you know, production would go, hey, why do we need so many array vehicles, you know? Well, because I've got to get them in that minute, at that time of day, right there with the stunt drivers. It's not like we could save them all up and shoot them all in a week's time, because the lighting's different, the crowd won't be there, everything will be different. It won't match. So production were fantastic, and they understood it. Justin understood it, everybody understood it, Steve Wendon understood it, and second unit directors all understood it. So we kind of pushed forward with that kind of technique, and it kind of paid off. It was great, you know.
It's pretty amazing, especially I was having some discussions recently about virtual production where for me it's no longer post-production when you're now bringing in digital assets very early on to be able to prep scenes, or in this case where it isn't just, hey, we got to, you know, prep how, you know, where the green screen is going to be or the blue screen over here. It's this much work going into pre-prod before, you know, ever setting up a set or rigging all the lights and everything else. So it's amazing to see how now it's very much a 360 environment where visual effects is now part of the entire process side by side, rather than, you know, we'll fix it in post.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the more we can educate the whole process, you know, visual effects touches on so many departments that, you know, the team on Fast 9 were fantastic in that, you know, we all wanted one aim, and that's, you know, one simple driving shot needs this, you know, and when you explain it like that, we're all going towards that one goal, you know, they get it. And I think it's the job of the supervisors to have the confidence and the relationships like you were talking about, in order to talk to them and say, look, I'm not asking it this because we may use it or we may not. We're going to use this, you know. The whole film is about driving, you know. This is, you know, this is the blood of the film. So, you know, we want to make it work. So we want it to be good. This is the way to do it. And yeah, everybody was on board, and the collaboration between all the departments is just fantastic, you know.
That's so great. I have one last question, which would be, in terms of upcoming technology and tools, is there anything that you specifically have your eye on? I mentioned virtual production. Other things would be I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden.
Digital humans.
Yeah, I was going to say, deep fakes, for instance.
Yeah, I think the next level digital humans, will be it's the face replacement fast, action is there, but it's still, there's just a little ways to go on that. And I think that, the whole Unreal Engine thing is fantastic, but really, we were talking about, look, if I told you, I was talking about with DNEG, we had on Johnny English, we had a helicopter shot where we needed to drop Rowan Atkinson off on Canary Wharf. And there's 2 Canary Wharfs in the film. And I said, let's have the other one virtual and let's link it up. So, I want to be able to GPS the position of the helicopter and project forward in the eyepiece where the second tower is, so that the DP can frame up nicely on the 2 Canary Wharfs as we come flying in, because he's on a parachute and he lands on one of the Canary Wharf towers. And so way back then, I was thinking, where does the Unreal Engine work? Green Zone, we were shooting on a back lot and needed to know what Saddam's palace looked like and the arches. We were going nowhere near Baghdad, but we wanted to frame up for Barry Ackroyd. And we had a device that, projected those images in his eyepiece so that he could see physically what that all is. And Unreal Engine, and what all they're doing on Mandalorian is fantastic, and all the Star Wars stuff and all of that is, an extension of that. And so, that's great. And it's getting better that you don't need to do composites and you just do shots now, using it. But the digi-human thing, I'm waiting for that. Somewhere around there, VFX supervisors are working on that. I know they are. There's boffins out there that are doing it. And I'm excited about seeing that and going, hey, that was all CG. And that was Marilyn Monroe acting with a young Clint Eastwood. That's amazing,
Yeah, I'm excited too. I had Doug Roble on recently, who's the oldest employee at DD. He's heading up all the digital human stuff. So that's just been kind of fascinating to just kind of look at the direction that's going, both with deep fake technology as well as performance capture, kind of bridging the two together. Because he worked in Benjamin Button, a few of the other projects you mentioned.
Great work.
Yeah, I think that's, obviously just like what we're talking about with digital doubles. I mean, that's going to revolutionize everything, because now you literally can redo someone's performance if, there's a note that isn't just, hey, replace that background, but, I don't like his eye line or whatever it might be. It's kind of crazy that we're going that direction, but it's exciting at the same time.
Yeah, and to do things, everybody, they watch a film and what's the next bar to thrilling the audience. You need these tools in order to give directors the chance to be able to do that stuff realistically, and safely. And so I think once that tool set becomes, as available as a whatever, face replacement, it's gonna bring on some pretty amazing things.
It's exciting times. Peter, thanks so much. I appreciate you taking the time to chat. Where can people go to find out more about you as well as DNEG?
Oh, we're all over the web.
The Google.
DNEG.com. Yeah. Just do that. But there's a whole world out there of VFX, so don't confine yourself to that. There's fantastic work being done by so many companies. So, delve deep, because it's not always necessarily the big companies that get, to do the cool work. So, Booth do amazing stuff, so just smaller companies should be represented. I mean, everybody talks about the big companies, but we were a small company. We just wanted to do stuff, work on cool stuff. And I think smaller shows, and I think, the whole Amazon and Netflix thing has given, just that they need product, and so they're green lighting a lot more scripts that are a little bit more daring, and I think that's giving artists opportunities to kind of excel and to experiment. And I kind of, you know, hats off to that, you know. Push the boundaries. Don't, you know, Marvel do their thing, Fast do their thing, you know, but there's these other stuff going on that's cool, and that should be, people should know about that, you know. Smaller
So
film.
true.
Yeah.
Absolutely, so true. Thank you again. I appreciate your time, and this has been really amazing to get to sit down and talk about all of this with you.
Well, look, hey, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for taking an interest, you know, because, you know, it's great just to, you know, be able to talk about it.